My wife is here. I got friends and colleagues and customers and a lot of different people that I greatly respect and admire, and therefore it's a special moment for me. ESTMA. ESTMA. Welcome to the world of transparency. I'd like to talk about various things today, and I'll start with this one. I've got about 5 or 6 slides or so on this, but I won't get into too much detail. So if you're a mining company or any sort of resource company, welcome to the world of transparency. And welcome to the world of disclosing to the Canadian government of how much money you pay to the Canadian government or any other foreign government. We're all for transparency. It might be a little bit of information overload. However, that is what you're required to do. So what does that mean? And we did a few of these applications last week, and I see a few people in the room that I did this with, and it's actually a pretty simple process. So, you know, there's been scandals and things in the Canadian stock markets, etc. So the Canadian government feels that disclosure with respect to payments to government should be disclosed. And I've had a lot of questions on this, and this says, oh, what do you mean? You mean so when I insure my SUV in Bogota and I pay a license fee to the government, do I have to disclose that as a payment? Well, no. I mean, we don't have to exaggerate the situation, and I'll tell you what kind of payments you do need to disclose. Who reports? If you're a public company, you report. You just do. In the extraction industry. If you're not a public company, there's some criteria there that you'll look at and see where you may qualify. So back to my license comment. Well, you're not going to probably disclose, the $50 you paid for the license fee. So the reporting is payments exceeding $100,000, individually or in the aggregate. Okay, so if you're paying $100,000 Canadian equivalent or more in the aggregate, you need to report and disclose on a cash basis only. So if you're accruing some stuff, you don't report that. It's only when you pay. What kind of categories do we have to report? Well, here they are. So licenses is there, and if your total vehicle license fees exceed $100,000, I'd really like to audit your company because you're buying a lot of cars. But you probably not. However, concession payments. If you're got 10,000 hectares of land and you're paying $7 per hectare, you must disclose. And other sorts of payments as well. When do you report? So this is live. So if you're a public company in Canada, in the extraction industry, you are supposed to be registered. If you are not registered, please do not hesitate. It is okay. You can register, and it's quite an easy process. You sit on your laptop, and I'm not a big spreadsheet person, and you fill out the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet says the name of the company and what's your address and who's the signing officer. You email that form. ESTMA gives you a little number that will remember you by. And then you've got your little number, and then that number you put into your next spreadsheet, and your next spreadsheet you'll summarize your payment. Which government did you pay to? How much money? And the type of payment. And if it was in a foreign currency, say what that amount was in the currency that it was paid in. So I put some thinking about this and started thinking, why are we doing this and so forth. And it makes sense, okay? And the thing is, you're supposed to publicly disclose that. So if I'm an investor, a shareholder, or a regulator, and so forth, I should be able to go on your website and pull up that little spreadsheet and know how much money you pay to the various governments. I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know what the outcome will be, whether or not this will cause governments to talk more or cooperate more. However, that's what's live right now. If you've got specific questions on that, feel free to ask us. Who signs that report? It typically is a director or officer. A CFO would be typical. The auditor can as well. Nobody's asked me to sign that report yet, but you can engage your auditor to verify the report in order to get some more comfort. If the Canadian government feels that there's incomplete information or misleading information, they can audit you. And we don't know what that means yet, but we would guess that they would come into your office and check out your records to see if they match your reporting. So be aware of it. In our world, we're not talking about it significantly, but it's quite a bit of information that public companies are going to have to disclose out there to the Canadian government. And this, by the way, includes payments to the Canadian government. It isn't just to foreign governments as well. So there you go. So that's a little bit on that. And now I'm going to switch topic. And it's a tough word to pronounce, right? But it's the word fraud. And I want to talk about that a little bit because, as markets turn and we got some optimistic things happening here and we're hopefully in for a nice cycle. It isn't just commodities, it's technology, it's marijuana, it's this and that. And all things being equal, hopefully we're heading to a nice cycle for the foreseeable future for various industries. And when there's money on the table, then people like to make decisions. And this is the time when you make decisions, right? And I want to talk a little bit about behavior and decision and the consequences of a decision. And I'll start with that legal definition of what is fraud. And there it is. It's a false statement of fact, knowledge that the statement is untrue, and very importantly is the intent to deceive. Here's the accounting definition. Intentional manipulation of financial statements for some of these types of areas. And the key word in all this, whether it's legal or accounting or the geos in the room or the promoters and the brokers and the investment bankers, I bet you will have somewhat similar definition. The key word is intent. If you intended to do something wrong, then that can be construed as fraud. So, 50 years ago or 40 years ago, the word intent was very difficult to prove. I mean, how can you get into the mindset of the human being and know what they intended to do? It was very, very difficult. Still remains difficult in today's world. However, the biggest difference between now and then is what all of us do every day, 100 times a day, and that's sit on that computer and write those emails. Because when you're sending those emails, they're there forever. Now, we wake up in the morning and we have some days, and sometimes you don't sleep well and things happen and you have bad days, okay? And I didn't read Shakespeare that much in high school. I didn't really read it. I mean, I did because I had to, because Shakespeare was always part of the criteria, and in college as well. And I always had troubles understanding it, and I always had to read the Cole's version of it. And even with that, I struggled and so forth. But there's one line that I always remember from that. Well, there's probably two lines, to be or not to be. I thought that was a really good one. The second one that I thought is really, really good is to err is human. And so we make mistakes. And there isn't anybody in their room, and there's a lot of people I really, really respect here, but everybody in this room makes mistakes, and it's daily. And if you think you don't, then you should check your ego out the door, because we do it, okay? So we make mistakes in our lives, and we err. And so what do we do when we've got mistakes in our lives? And it's the accounting, it's the legal, and so forth. But so there's all kinds of types of mistakes. And, there's a mistake where your spreadsheet had a wrong formula, and you might have been a couple $1,000 off. Okay, forget about it. No big deal. And then there's a little mistake where maybe your spreadsheet had a wrong formula, but it was a couple $1,000,000. But you didn't do it on purpose. You just didn't put the cell CE to B22 and it happened, and I didn't catch it as your auditor. And so at that point in time, you said, well, Carla, what do you think? Okay, well, you got to fix it. And then Jeremy, well, okay, we didn't find it on the audit side. Well, you got to fix it. Okay, fix it. Likelihood that everybody's going to look at that and go, fix it, it's okay, let's move on. And then there's a mistake that you could have made that you knew about it, and that's the intent part. And it's that kind of mistake where you get into trouble, because when you do that, and the intention is that the fear is that are you going to do it again? And in the world of email, if you have one bad email, and you're sitting there and that bad email is presented in front of you, well, I had a bad day and this and that. Okay. But what if you've got 20 emails like that? And what if those 20 emails were from various dates and there was various people's copied and all sorts, and you pile it all up and you go, well, I can smell some intent there, It's a little bit more than a one-off. So be careful. Be careful what you say there, because it can be used against you. So when you have a situation like that, okay, and you know what I mean, and you're financially strapped and you made a decision and you knew it was the wrong decision, but you did it. And you did it for the reasons that you did it for. And you might have had good personal reasons to do it, but you did it anyways. At that point in time, okay, when you're confronted in that situation, you need to look at it and you need to say to yourself, I did make a mistake, didn't I? And if you do that, okay, you're going to get punished. If you intended to make a mistake and you made a mistake, you're going to get punished. However, if you're aware of it and you acknowledge it and you demonstrate your character that you avoid repeating it again, you may get some leniency. And you may be viewed as a person who deserves a second chance. And so therefore, mistakes are okay. There's nothing wrong with them. I make them all the time. And therefore, you just need to look to see what type of mistake was it. Was it a big mistake? Was it a little mistake? Did I do it on purpose? Did I get caught? If I got caught, how am I going to conduct myself now? As I've read in some books some upon a time, it's not what happens, it's how you deal with what happens. And that's what I wanted to say about accounting and fraud. Some other little topics of discussion. Challenging continuous in terms of auditing foreign companies. These are sort of the highlights. Taxation values versus accounting values. There's a lot of countries in the world still that report audits in statutory according to the tax base because it's required by law. No problem. In Canada, we need to reconcile that to IFRS. That's a continuous challenge. Depreciation. A lot of countries around the world have preset depreciation rates. They tell you exactly what you got to depreciate at what rate. That's cool. In Canada, we look at based on useful life, and we need to consider other things. Classification. Different countries around the world call things different things, and they put them in different categories. And sometimes what we call debt is called capital in South America. And sometimes what we call short-term is viewed as long-term somewhere else. And we are constantly challenged by our ability to reconcile that. And fair value difference is a big one too, because what we think something is worth here isn't always what somebody else thinks somebody is worth somewhere else. Because we have models and we put interest rates and present values and spreadsheets and discounts and things like that. So it isn't always the same. Those are the main challenges. And as I go through this relatively quickly, I encourage the people in the room here to look at the mindset of the regulators. Andy's not a regulator, but of the regulators in the room here and in the crowd as well, is the mindset. The success of downtown Vancouver, in my view, is contingent upon our ability to cooperate together. Whether it's a regulator or the TSX or the mining or the geos or the IR and so forth and all that. Our success for this town is our ability to work together. And so I encourage everybody, if you have a mindset of adversarial, to change that and look at it from a cooperation point of view. So when you get that letter from Carla Marie, or when I get the little comment from Jeremy and so forth, don't panic. They're not trying to get you. Might be they have some questions. Carla Marie's a lovely person. You can call her up. Try not to give her 5,000 phone calls tomorrow morning. But she's a human too, and she wants capital markets to be healthy as well, and so does CPAB, and so does TSX, and so do we. A little bit on IT quickly. Movement to the cloud, that's happening all over the place. The ability to access your data. I was away last week. I was able to log into my computer. It was great if you have good internet. Email security, I talked about that. Be careful when you're setting client data over email. If I'm sending stuff over to clients and spreadsheets and PDFs, be careful. There's a lot of softwares out there that can manage that risk to make sure it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Evaluations of IPs is very interesting as we head into technology-based economy. And iPhone versus Android, I've got the iPhone 6. I'm debating what to get next, and I really have no idea. It seems like most of them are plus or minus the same. But the comment on technology is you must be up to date, and you have to get your technology up to speed in your organization because it's important and it's not going away. I love to pick up the phone. I really do. I'd rather talk to you and see you than email you, but it's here. And don't over-technologize. We don't need to spend a lot of money to get technology in your organization for 5,000 people when you've only got 30. So, we always want to be up to speed and all that nice stuff, but just, with caution, get your technology up to date, but a nice healthy balance. Lastly, I just wanted to show something quickly, and it's just kind of my view of the world a little bit.
Maybe why you say that. Maybe if anybody has any question cards, they want to have any questions, try to fill those out. Pick those up shortly.
I'm going to wrap up in a minute too. So here's the world, and I didn't pick any countries in any particular order, but I just want to read this out loud quickly. I read this in the paper a couple days ago. In 2017, the year of the rooster, Chinese authorities expect holidaymakers to make 2.5 billion trips by land, 356 million by rail, 58 million by plane, and 43 million by sea over the 40-day period, which starts on January 13th. So there's going to be 2.5 billion trips, 58 million going by plane in a 40-day period. And that's just China. and then you've got Russia on my map, and you've got population changes and so forth. And frankly, I love Toronto. It's a beautiful place. But, you know, Vancouver doesn't get up to 35 that often, that humid, and we've had a cold winter, I know, and lots of rain. But I wouldn't want to do business anywhere else if I could, other than downtown Vancouver. And so I'm of the view that not just real estate, because real estate money has been pouring in for a long time, but maybe international money will now start focusing on capital markets in Vancouver as well. So the message here for me today is let's kind of keep the conversation going. Let's engage with one another. Healthier markets and healthier cooperations will bring money into this town, which will create wealth and prosperity. And that is for me. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention.